Pleasure to present in international premiere the movie The Algerian. It's a production of USA and Algeria, directed by Giovanni Zelko. We have the pleasure to have with us the director today. On a le plaisir d'avoir le réalisateur avec nous. Please welcome, accueillons Giovanni Zelko.
Thank you for coming tonight. Before I forget, on your way out tonight, we've brought a special gift. We have a very powerful original sound score that was composed in Los Angeles by a very talented musician and a group of musicians. So on the way out, if you wish, there will be sound CDs for the soundtrack in the back door there that we'll hand out to you. And it's an interesting piece that we did. The beginning of each track, each song, has a piece of dialogue, so that the entire story of the film is revealed, hinted out throughout the CD as you listen to it. So I hope you enjoy the music to that. And just briefly before the film started, I wanted the audience to know that this film was truly a work of pleasure, and this is its international premiere, so I hope you enjoy it. We spent 1 year in pre-production, 2 years in filming, and 2 years in post-production, and we filmed on 2 continents, and we worked on the film on 3 continents. It's filmed in Los Angeles, New York, Las Vegas, and in Algeria, and we also did some post-production sound in Stockholm. So it has an international cast and an international group of filmmakers, and my last note is to please silence your cell phones for the screening, and have a good screening. Thank you very much.
Alors, le film a été fait dans 3 pays différents.
Recall the question. To reiterate the question, was I conscious when we were beginning the screenplay and developing the film of times to come? The screenplay was created in 2009 before the Arab Spring, and the father character, who is the head of the terrorist cell, essentially his desire is to instigate, to do something that would trigger a chain reaction in the Middle East of his followers in the plot of revolutions throughout the Middle East. While we were filming, that actually essentially started to happen with the Arab Spring. So we began restructuring the script as we shot to reflect the Arab Spring. So we added it in dialogue. Some scenes are actually a beat behind, so there's mention of coffee in Damascus, so that occurred before the Syrian uprising. And we were not able to reshoot that, so we left it as is. So it's not terribly incorrect. But so the story was developed by Ben Youssef and myself, and the focus of the story was essentially a post-9/11 reaction of coexistence and tolerance to different religions, and not to view every Muslim man in America as a potential threat. So we went about a very interesting way of delivering that message by bringing a character who was a Muslim man who was radicalized and working as a sleeper cell in the United States, and then deprogrammed as he met the human beings that he was taught to hate, and he fell in love with a girl and became very dear friends with another girl who happened to be Jewish, and became good friends with solid, ethical, normal Muslim men who were good people, and taught him the right path and brought his moral compass to be centered as opposed to his radical views. So the film is really a deconstruction of the central character. In a nutshell, you have a radicalized person who is de-radicalized by spending time amidst the very people he was sent to destroy. So ultimately the film was designed to be one of tolerance and coexistence. The fact that the Arab Spring took place and then eventually ISIS is a separate sort of issue, but the Arab Spring is a fascinating sort of historical occurrence that I didn't predict it in the screenplay. Ben Youssef and myself, we developed a story around the central character being a sleeper cell. I used a book, I believe it's called The Middle East in 2015. That book was written in 2002, and it was a series of essays and position papers from Washington, D.C. think tanks, from I think 8 different think tanks from different perspectives. And more or less, all of those think tanks had the same theory, that eventually, with the population booms being as they were, and the population densities in the Middle Eastern countries, and the disaffection with the youth, with governments that were from Cold War era governments that were suppressing the people, that eventually something had to happen, and that there would be revolutions in the Middle East. So that wasn't my idea as a screenwriter. I took that from a book, and the fallen character is the head of the terrorist cell. He is, all the facts that he spews out about the population densities, that's taken from that book. So I basically took a book of information and placed it in his mind. So the film is a political theory film, became a film about political practice, and then the Arab Spring did occur. So our film, I believe our film is the, if I'm not mistaken, is the most current, up-to-date film dealing with the Middle Eastern Arab Spring, the repercussions thereafter, and to some extent, I mean, it's history in the making. So yesterday, the Prime Minister of Britain placed England on the highest alert it's been in 3 years because of the ISIS threat, because of one of the ISIS members being a British citizen, and they could hear his accent from being a London person. And the great fear in Europe is that radicalized Muslims that are homegrown from European countries who have gone on a jihad to foreign countries, specifically Syria, to some extent Iraq and Afghanistan, will eventually return, and or have already begun to return to their home countries and become a very, very serious threat, because those individuals are the ultimate sleeper cell. They are from those countries, they have those passports, they speak the proper language, and they have the proper customs. So it would be very difficult for someone who is planning to do something wicked to be caught and prevented, etc. So I hope that answers your question. It was a long question. I think I gave you a long answer, but.
And I would do a
Good
quick.
luck. She's going to translate.
Le scénario a été fait avant le printemps arabe, puis lorsqu'on commençait.
The gentleman who was the bike seller from Syria.
Correct.
Do you know how he was arrested by the FBI? Was that to kind of imply? Was there a point more so to imply that they were arresting the wrong people?
Yes.
Okay.
As well as a cinematic device to create tension at the end of that period of the film, to accelerate the other characters to move into motion. So the Ali character sees him being arrested by the FBI. He doesn't know what's going on, so
Delays it by a day.
So rather than do it in proper time, which would have been 48 hours later, he makes a phone call and said, we have to do it tomorrow. Right after 9/11, the FBI and local enforcement were picking up a lot of the wrong people, and they'd pick them up for a few days, question them, and then just kind of return them back to their businesses. So I have friends that occurred to. Ben knows friends as well, and it was in the news, etc. So that was mostly about that. They got the wrong guy. Because
this was 10 years after that.
I'm sorry?
This was 10 years after that. Still making those mistakes?
Occasionally, yeah. And now with ISIS, they'll be making those mistakes again.
Sorry?
Now with ISIS being a problem,
Right.
they'll be making those mistakes again.
Donc en fait.
Mistakes, they're not deliberate.
No, they're not deliberate. I mean, they're doing the best they can in a very difficult situation. So, difficult times call for difficult measures.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Thank you. And follow us. Thank you very much.
Bon festival à tous et merci à Giovanni Zelko encore.
We wanted to make a film where people see a world of tolerance and coexistence, and didn't just jump to conclusions about a person. So really a place to make to pause. What's going on with ISIS right now? Another flare-up in the Middle East, and I think it was 2 days ago that the English Parliament, they brought the threat level for terrorism in England to the highest it's been in 2 years. So this film is very poignant, it's very timely, because it's part of the current affairs, it's part of the fabric of our society today. And obviously we still have issues with terrorist sleeper cells living in cities, throughout the United States and possibly throughout Europe, and the potential threat is there regardless if anything happens. So,
yes, I just want to know, why did you pick Algeria and why did you call the film The Algerian?
it's the most often question I get. The film is perceived to be a big budget film. It's actually a very small budget film. The person who plays Ali, his name is Ben Youssef. He's my partner, as I said. He is from Algeria. Had he been Italian, we'd call the movie The Italian. Had he been from Morocco, we'd call it Moroccan. It doesn't make sense to me as a filmmaker to try and change someone's accent or to try and change their background. I had access to Algeria through Ben because he travels there to see the family. If he lived somewhere else in the world, we'd call it that city. The idea of calling it the name of the film a person is to, rather than show the main character Ali as a thing, we just wanted people to see him as a human being from a place. So we called the film The Algerian, so that we view him first and foremost as a man and not as a thing. So that was the rationale behind the title. Okay. Question? Go ahead.
Isn't it because Algeria has been through several years, they've been through terrorism era for such a long time, and they've been asking the rest of the world to pay attention to what's going on there. Isn't it this reason? Maybe I should have asked.
No, honestly, it's a good question. She asked if the reason calling the Algerian was because of the political and historical occurrences in Algeria in the last 30, 40 years. That was not the case. If anything, aside from Ben being from Algeria and having access to shoot there, making the film authentic, Algeria obviously has a unique political history, like most countries, so we were able to tap into that a little bit to create the character. But Ben and I studied film history, and Ben, being from Algeria, we're both huge fans of a famous film called Battle of Algiers, which is a great political film. It's studied in film school. It's considered one of the best documentary-style films of all time. It's beautifully shot, beautifully acted by some real actors and non-actors. So Ben and I took a lot of cues from that film in creating our film, and we wanted to tap into that documentary style. We shot a couple sequences from the Casbah and from the opening shot for the city of Algiers. It was the same shots that we looked at in the film Battle of Algiers. So it was an homage that we wanted to make to Pontecorvo, who was the director of Battle of Algiers. So there was a little bit of that involved. The city is beautiful. I've traveled extensively. I think I mentioned before, I've been to 49 countries around the world. I've been throughout the Middle East. And if I had a $50 million budget and I could shoot anywhere in the world, who knows? But I've always been drawn to Algiers as a city because of that film, since I had studied it in my youth. And I always wanted to go visit the city and to go shoot there. So this was a dream come true in a way. It's an interesting question. No, I do not think that we are naive, or I am naive. We took our cues from what we can draw from headlines from newspapers. Specifically, we took a lot of information from 9/11, post 9/11, and studying what was going on. The 19 terrorists that were involved, they were all living in the United States extensively. A couple of them hadn't even been questioned and released. So we took the story, plot points of the main characters in the cell from history. So no, I don't think we're naive. I think there's millions of people in America, and for 3 or 4 individuals to slip by is realistic, especially if they're trying to slip by. All the characters were constantly changing the way they looked in the different scenes, so they were aware of who they were and how they were being watched, and they moved around quickly. So all that was taken from newspaper articles, magazines that I read, and books that I read on different cells and how they functioned, and the protocol they used on phone calls, and what they did in their lifestyle. They used public transportation as much as possible. They didn't drive cars. They stayed off the grid as much as possible. And
there was an Algerian TV that said that this movie is going to affect the image of Algerian people.
Our trailer went somewhat viral in Algeria, because it's called The Algerian, about 4 months ago. So it created a lot of question about what the film was about. Why would you make a film about terrorists called The Algerian? It's a negative film about our country, etc. Good, fair points. Not having seen the film, because the film was never released anywhere except in festivals in the United States at that point, and this is the first time outside. So please jump online and give them your thoughts. The response that we gave online to our trailer was that the trailer was just to evoke interest in the film, and that the film was actually about an Algerian man who was Muslim who ultimately is the hero of the film. And we left it at that. So we feel that ultimately Ben Youssef is Algerian, and I don't think he would go out and make a movie that was negative propaganda to his country. And I certainly, as a filmmaker, would never do that to any particular country for any reason whatsoever. We think that in the end, it's a very well-balanced film. There's multiple layers, as you, an audience, I think, will agree. And we deal with a lot of different things in sociology, theology, politics, and ethics and morals. So it's a heavy film. But in the end, I think as far as the country of Algeria goes, it is ultimately a positive on the country. It's a beautiful country. We filmed the segments that we showed in a very beautiful light. And the character Ali, who comes from Algeria, ultimately saves the day at the end of the film, without giving away the plot, for those who haven't seen it, and he's the hero of the film. So I think that's positive. I hope they see it as positive. I wanted to take a moment to thank the entire staff of the Montreal World Film Festival. Everyone has been wonderful from day one to every single aspect of the festival. I've been to a lot of festivals, and so far this has really been the best, and I really appreciate the audience participation, and the City of Montreal has been wonderful, so I wanted to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to show our film to all of you. So thank you very much.